Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our conversation, Can We Measure a Company Culture? Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. All lines are on mute and they will remain on mute for the duration of the presentation. However, we have saved time to answer questions at the end, so if you have questions as we're going through it, please drop them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Always the most popular question, is this being recorded? Yes, it is. We will send out the recording after, as well as any slides that we present. All right, without further ado, let me hand it over to my colleague, Kristen, to get us started.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kate. And hi, everyone. And welcome to the second of 3 sessions that we've been hosting as part of a series on the topic of culture. I'm thrilled that you've all joined us today. And in this session, Can we measure a company culture? We will discuss the importance of data-driven insights when working on culture. We'll share real-life results of culture assessments, and we'll provide you with ways in which you can start your organization on a culture change journey. And before we get started into this particular discussion, I do want to share a few key points from our last session. So first, let's ground us all in the definition of culture. And so the way that we define it is corporate culture refers to the shared values, attitudes, standards, and beliefs that characterize members of an organization and define its nature. And in our first session, we were joined by Gaëlle de la Fosse, president of LHH, where we heard from her as a business leader around why culture is a key competitive advantage for organizations today. One of the insights she shared with us was that culture plays an important role in driving retention, and it can be a key competitive advantage, particularly in times of talent scarcity. And then finally, I want to share some insights with you from LHH's recent Workforce Trends Survey. We asked respondents to tell us, outside of compensation, what, if anything, makes people want to work at an organization. 49% of employers said a good workplace culture. 39% of employees said a good workplace culture. We also asked, what should your company increase its investment in to better attract and or retain talent? 36% of employers and almost 30% of employees said a good workplace culture. So all of this continues to tell us that culture within the organizations in which we work, it really matters. And it's important that we all work hard to make it better for a number of reasons. So let me first start by introducing myself and our panelists. So I'm Kristen Leverone. I'm the Global Managing Director of LHH's Leadership Development business. I've had a long career here at LHH, supporting our clients address both talent and leadership challenges. And I'm delighted to welcome Alex Marins and Emma Kelly today. Alex is joining us from Brazil. He is part of our Global Leadership Development leadership team and is one of our global experts in supporting organizations with their culture initiative. He's been doing this work for over 20 years, and he brings deep expertise as well as a personal passion for building strategic partnerships. We have Emma Kelly with us, and she is the Director of Analytics for Barrett Values Center. Emma has been working in culture analytics for over 10 years. She works with both consultants and leadership teams to design and interpret culture analytics. And LHH is partnering with Barrett Values Center to provide their culture assessments in the work that we do to help support our client organizations. So we'll hear more about that today. So Alex and Emma, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're so pleased you're with us. And so Emma, before we get started into, learning more about the work that you've been doing with Barrett Values Center, I did want to share with the group here today that we're really excited at LHH because we've just formalized a global partnership agreement with Barrett Values Center. We are not new to each other, though. We have been working together in various geographies and in various ways over the last 12 years. But together, we're excited to move forward in the future. And one of the things that we really appreciate and value with BBC, Barrett Values Center, is that they've been working in the culture and leadership space for over 25 years. And when they first started, it was a time when culture was seen by many as an undefinable and static characteristic. We now know that it is neither. Culture is measurable and it can be shifted and even transformed. So BBC has conducted over 10,000 analytic engagements with Fortune 500 companies, small and medium-sized businesses, not-for-profits, communities, and even countries. They also take a similar tailored approach to the work that they engage with their clients, just as we do at LHH, that organizational change is a journey. It's not a formula, and it's unique to every organization. And so their assessments and the processes that they use can also be tailored to the clients that we support. So with that, Emma, I'd like to start with you. In the conversations, that I have and that we all have with organizations around culture, we're hearing some of the same things. And one of the common things we hear is, organizations may have tried one initiative or one project or one workshop, but that they're just not able to really see sustainable results as it relates to culture change. So in the work that you've been doing, Emma, with Barrett, what have you seen that really helps organizations make this change really stick?
Absolutely. Thank you, Kristen. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So with our work, you're absolutely correct. These conversations are ones that go on time and time again. But we believe that our analytics really work to support organizations by being anywhere that they are on their path to improving the culture. Because we measure the values, which are often, our deepest driver of behaviors, we're able to really uncover the root cause and also present a clear direction for how to change. So our assessments look to support a level of understanding and change by, taking on the entire human system, the leaders, the people, the processes, and the systems that all make up culture.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Emma. And so, Alex, I'm gonna shift over to you. So Emma just shared that values are the deepest driver of attitudes and behavior. So to be able to shift or change a culture, it's really critical to provide clarity on the organizational values, but also to help people and leaders align their values to the organization values. Additionally, as we work with Barrett, we've been leveraging their model, which is a science-based model that we can all learn from to help organizations drive culture change. We'd love, Alex, if you could share the model with us. And when you do that, if you could focus on what is it about the model that you found to be so impactful or powerful, insightful in your client work?
For sure. Thanks, Kristen, for the question. And hello, team. What I would say is, for me, what makes it so powerful in terms of the Barrett model is because it works as a progressive framework for our clients. As you can see in the slide, the model outlines 7 different stages that we could name, for example, as maturity levels. And those stages are also associated to the values list that we use in the assessment, so that any group or company using it can easily see where they are now versus they want to be in the future. And another very important aspect that it contributes in crafting the path to get there, because understanding where the company, in which level the company is concentrated today versus where they want to achieve, the values and the maturity levels helps, the methodology helps us design with the clients this path. I mentioned the stages, and they are listed here, as you can see in the slide, but they are built upon the Abraham Maslow model, so it's very easily to understand and comprehend. They talks about the human needs and motivation, which consequently influence people's behaviors and organizational ways of working. The 3 lower levels sets the foundation that addresses all the basic survival needs. And once those needs are met, individuals and organizations seek for progression. And in order to achieve that, they consequently need to incorporate new values and behaviors that will enable them work for the upper levels towards common purpose and jointly delivering a positive impact for their clients and the future generations. That's for me why I think it's the beautifully of the model.
Yeah, and so, Alex, as we kind of look at this model, right, like on the right side there, it's first really addressing the foundation. Then it's knowing that in order for culture change to stick, our expectation has to be that it is a progression, that it evolves and it changes, right? And then
Right.
ultimately it's about making that impact and getting to the highest level. So
Exactly.
Emma, I don't know if there's anything else you want to comment on as it relates to the model before we move on.
Yeah, I would just say with the model, one of the things that I really connect with is that it's not hierarchical. There's not a judgment inherent in it. We really need to be able to address all of these issues in order, as individuals and organizations, to really have that sustainable change. And so that's where the model comes in, I think, into its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So Emma, let's stay with you here. As we, in the work that you do in really leveraging a culture assessment, right, to gain the analytics, to use a measurement tool, what are some of those key insights that, that you've seen in the work that you've done, or that we could expect to see from leveraging this type of assessment?
Absolutely. So for me, the beauty of the culture assessment really lies in its simplicity. The assessment measures 3 areas. It looks at the personal values of the people, the current values of the culture, and the desired values that are requested in the culture. These 3 powerful questions can often reveal a wealth of deep insights on the opportunities and the challenges for an organization. To share a few of the insights you can begin to expect. One of them is when we analyze the matches between personal values and current culture. We know that when there is an alignment between what employees, really personally value and what the company values and lives, then employees tend to have a greater level of engagement. They really feel like they can bring their authentic selves to work. And as such, this starts to support that idea that this is a great place to work. Another thing is the analysis between the current and the desired culture. This often can provide really deep insights into opportunities for change, for that progression, that evolution and growth. The current culture might be characterized by what we term low entropy. There's frustration or friction, if there is any. A low entropy will often suggest that the culture is effective and positive in its being. And yet we can often find that employees still are seeking something different. The employees are able to express their desire, their energy for the organization to progress and to move by looking at what they identify as different values in the current culture from what they are looking for in the desired culture. This is often, a very exciting time for the leaders, because it really does begin to reveal that level of openness from their employees, the openness, the willingness to make the culture more effective, to really strive to support that mission, those goals of the business.
Yeah, and Emma, you just mentioned the sort of the term entropy, and so some of us might certainly know what the word is, but may not know how that concept is used around, like, within culture. And so I know even for me, as I was learning more about the work that you all have done in being able to identify and measure entropy, I found it really helpful, because sometimes it's things we know intuitively, but by using your measurement approach, we're able to identify it and quantify it. So could you take a few minutes, share a little bit more about what we mean by cultural entropy, and then maybe even move into some examples of the results around this topic?
Yeah, I would love to. So entropy in itself is actually a term from the physical sciences. It broadly refers to the degree of disorder or uncertainty in a system. Here at BBC, we define it as this level of friction, the frustration and the fear that often results in wasted energy and effort. We'll have all have experienced entropy at some point. Examples of it can include things like lost productivity from weeks of work that's not been aligned with the objectives, or the inability to really bring your best self to work because of micromanagement, infighting, control. The culture assessment, as you said, is able to identify and isolate this lost energy and effort. And also gives you an element of, where does it come from? You know, is it related to people? Is it related to some of those foundational viabilities, or is it actually structural and organizational in its root causes? So are we seeing things, you know, like cost reduction or bullying, or is it more about bureaucracy and hierarchy? When the negative impact of this is represented as a metric, that can really be translated into lost hours and lost revenue. You know, leaders can often start to see culture differently. It really becomes that competitive advantage or disadvantage that can be managed and really help them rally around this drive for culture change. So I would love to share a specific example, if that's
That
good.
would be great. We would love that too. Thank you.
Thank you. So here you can see the findings from a financial technology company that was located in North America. The findings showed that actually they had quite an elevated level of entropy. You can see here, we see that it's really requiring focus. Specifically, we found that they had, you know, really restrictive elements and inefficiencies in how they worked. They were living a more independent, competitive mindset. And these were all very prevalent in the current culture. The request for change was actually about allowing the organization and the employees to be much more enabled and responsive, to be able to agilely move through the different needs of the business, and to come together in a much more collaborative setting. So what you can see is actually this request for change was setting up both the employees and the organization for success. A focus on leadership development in this situation was key to unlocking this drive for new and inventive approaches.
You know, I want to just stay here for just a minute. There's just a question that came through on the Q&A around this, and since it's specific to entropy, I wanted to kind of throw it out to you. So the question is, how are you actually measuring cultural entropy?
Wonderful. Without getting too technical, what I would say is people select their values and behaviors that they experience from a list of around 100 words. We categorize these words as positive and potentially limiting. So the entropy looks at all of the potentially limiting values that are selected to describe the current culture. And that is where we come up with the percentage of the cultural entropy.
Right. Thanks, Emma.
Can I add on the conversation as well, Kristen?
Absolutely.
Okay, so first of all, still on cultural entropy, this is one of the Barrett reports. They have many KPIs, but the entropy is one that CEOs usually gets really fun of it, because what they say to me is, Alex, the entropy not only points to me the frustration aspects from my team, but also tells me where I am losing money, like on the table. Because if I'm not being productive, efficient, I'm losing money here. So that's usually opportunities they could take to improve not only the culture itself, but also their ways of working as well. So usually it's one thing. And in general, and I also like to add here is, besides the full Barrett assessment, we as LHH, in doing our consulting work, we also look for the qualitative data, because the Barrett brings the quantitative aspects in terms of the values list, number of respondents, KPIs, etc. But for really crafting the storytelling about the culture, where they are and where they want to be, we do lots of interviews and focus group sessions to collect real life examples and feedbacks from the groups, in a way that we can at the end combine the power of the data with the power of the stories, and really develop a very comprehensive diagnosis, I would say, and mapping between of the current culture versus the desired culture for companies.
Great, thanks, Alex. And we're going to stay here for a minute because we've got some questions coming through the Q&A on this topic.
Sure.
So Emma, I'm going to start with you. What is the like expected range here? Obviously, you've got the green over to the deeper red. Like what's considered a good score? What should organizations be aiming for here?
So the good score is in that 0 to 13%. We're not aiming for 0%. One, because it's unrealistic. I think we have to have realistic expectations of what life is like. And two, because often you need a little bit of friction. You need a little bit of grit or friction to help us encourage and move forward, to change and evolve. So we say that the good score is that 0 to 13%. That means that it's not impacting on people's day to day and holding them back.
Great, thanks. And then a follow-up to that was actually from the same person. It's the question is the entropy survey available for companies to use?
So the entropy forms part of our cultural assessment, which is available through our partners like yourselves.
Yeah. So entropy is part of the larger cultural assessment, which certainly is available to organizations.
Absolutely.
And then one final question, and then we'll move on. The question is, and I don't know if you have the answer to this or not, Emma, but they're curious about what the response rate was overall. And maybe it might be in this example or just what you tend to see with the cultural assessment.
So I did anticipate this. So I opened just before our meeting, I opened up the actual documents to see what it was. And for this situation, they had a slightly lower response rate. I think we were sitting at around the 60-65%, which is still great, but they were it was a relatively small organization. So what we tend to see is smaller aspects of organizations, you can expect higher response rates. Larger entities, I think, like any survey, the response rates tend to vary. We would say that you take your lead from other surveys that you do, other engagements, to know where you are as an organization, because it can vary, significantly.
Okay. It's a hot topic. So 2 more questions have come up, and I think they're good questions. So let's stay with them for a minute.
Sure.
Is this a self-administered tool, or is it something that needs to be facilitated by someone who's a quote accredited in some way?
Yes, it is somebody who's accredited in our model and in our assessment. So it's not self-administered.
Right. And then the last question is, was this, I guess in this example, did this go out to the entire enterprise, or was it just like a subset or like a division or a particular area of the organization?
So this was a particular region of a larger organization, which is, I'd say, it's North America. But it went to everybody within that region. There was no specific sampling done.
Right.
Can
Awesome.
I comment here as well?
Please, Alex.
Yeah, as usually what's more common is organizations, when they apply for the entire organization, having the full result, I would say, they also can pick and select what we name demographical cuts. So you can have subset of the results, for example, by business areas and functions, or hierarchy levels, or demographic regions, geographies, and so on. So it's the tool is very powerful and flexible, I would say.
Excellent. Thanks both. So Alex, we're gonna move on with the conversation. And
Sure.
I know particularly when I'm meeting with client organizations, they always want to learn from others, right? So what have you seen in the work that you've done in helping organizations with culture? What are some of those kind of common struggles or challenges that they experience? And if you could also take it a step further and share, how have we been able to help support those challenges and those struggles?
Okay, thanks, Kristen, for the question. I think the most important topic to start here is understanding that sometimes we need to help leaders see the importance of measuring culture. Usually, for them can be a more subjective approach, and not necessarily they consider that can be measured. But we then explain the power of data, because mapping the culture allows the organization sets a baseline. With the real data, they will be able to influence and design their transformation roadmap. And also they can implement progression measurements. When they realize that, they understand how powerful the measurement is. But also what I would say is, it doesn't mean we need to start big, for example, the full company. We also encourage leaders to consider starting small if they are not fully believing on the power of it, they can select a division or a team and conduct a cultural assessment of this specific group of people. This trial usually often proves out the value and the impact of the cultural data, setting the path towards a more comprehensive cultural initiative as a whole. And also, usually we suggest HR organization to start cultural change by doing the assessment of their own teams, because this can be powerful, especially when they share the results with their internal clients. They can demonstrate the desire and plans to adjust the culture for the future. And I can also say that many impactful cultural journeys start sometimes with an expected problem and solution in mind. And if you allow me, I can bring a very interesting client story here, an example. I was talking to a company CEO, and he said to me, Alex, I don't need a cultural assessment. I know what's our problem. And for me, our problem is our leaders. And we need to change them. I said, okay, so if you are really sure about that. So we jumped into a completely different program. We assessed the leaders and designed a leadership development journey for them. But once we completed the first step of the group leadership assessment results, and when they were presented and analyzed, the CEO and the HR team realized that there was a much wider problem. Consequently, they realized that they need to move back to the cultural assessment to really deep dive in the mapping, so they could understand all the cultural aspects that needed to be addressed. So this is just an example. So sharing with you, Kristen, and the group here, that it's not a single way or a single path. There are multiple ways we can start, and there are some different experiences and stories that we need to take into consideration.
Well, and Alex, what I love about that example is, many leaders, including myself, we make certain assumptions about what we think is going on in the organization. But by getting the objective data, right? Like that's really your point. Like by getting the data, it can sometimes confirm what we already know intuitively, but it also can bring to light something that maybe we weren't aware of in an objective way. So I think that's a great example. And Emma, obviously you've done lots of this work. Is there anything you want to add to this?
I think just, reiterating that point, it's grounding it in, yes, leaning into our intuition, but really into data. It helps us address some of our bias that we may come into this with, because we all often do come into it with some bias.
Right. And then there was another question that came through in the Q&A. The question was, is there a retest, right? So you go in up front and you're measuring the culture, you're gathering data. And Alex, to your point, there may be focus groups to combine the quantitative with qualitative. But at what point do we know if we've really made the shift? Like, how do we measure that?
We certainly encourage that. I think Alex will know that evolutionary journey is so important. So we do encourage looking at it as okay, what's year one and then what's year two, and how much movement have we made? Yeah.
I can also add, Kristen, that when we are working on a cultural transformation journey, at the end, we want people to change and we want the organization to change. So it usually takes time. It's not like a one-shot initiative. Usually it's like a long way road. We can say like 2 years. What we suggest clients is to reassess, because when you run the Barrett assessment, you have a baseline. But after 2 years, you can reassess. And Barrett also offers a possibility that we can map the evolution, comparing one result to the another. So they highlight all the changes and not the changes as well, what changed and what not changed. So there's a very interesting report for evolution mapping. But there are clients also that say, but I can't wait 2 years, Alex, to see if it's working. So what can we do? So usually we suggest like push checks that the clients can implement. For example, there are different examples. One example, for example, the one client that was so concentrated on the entropy solving, I would say, they created a post check on the entropy aspects. So they were checking how the entropy was being reduced from time to time, each quarter, for example, and saying if the initiatives they implemented were really solving or not. Another client, and I can talk about us, for example, LHH, because we have run our own assessment in Barrett, and we measure our culture from time to time as well. So we have our internal climate survey, and what we did is looking for the desired values. We have questions on our climate survey that from time to time, twice a year, we check our pulse internally, and we also check grades for those questions that are related to the desired values as well. So there are multiple ways we can do. So we suggest pulse checks from time to time, but then after 2 to 3 years, you can reassess the entire system through that reassessment of the Barrett.
Great, thanks, Alex. And we're getting a lot of questions through the Q&A, so I'm trying to kind of check those
Sure.
and keep us moving. But we're going to pause here for a minute. So one question here is, okay, what if cultural tenets have already been identified? Can the assessment be customized to assess current culture against desired culture?
Yes.
Maybe Emma, you go, and then we'll go to Alex on that.
Sure.
Absolutely. So yes, the assessment is customizable in terms of we have a standard, value set, but we certainly encourage the organizations to adapt and to adjust to make sure that it meets their needs, and then to be able to effectively assess that current versus desired state.
Yeah, that's a very common step when we are setting up the survey, Kristen, that we capture the existing value framework that the client has, and we make sure that these values, these tenets, are part of the list of values that will be assessed. So anyone can be voting on those values. Then the way they know that the way they know them in terms of they are titled.
Okay.
Correctly.
All right. So we also have a couple of questions around engagement surveys. So we have a culture survey, we have an engagement survey.
Mm-hmm.
Many organizations, like us, we have a pulse survey. So the question, let me see if I can combine these questions. The first part of that is, like, what's the connection point between the two, or what is the difference between the two?
Mm-hmm.
So Alex, do you want to start, and then I'll go to Emma?
Yeah, we can start. I think they are related because if you have a positive culture, usually it improves your engagement. But culture not necessarily is the unique aspect of the engagement itself. So, and in cultural, we deep dive in the specific dimensions of the organizational and really in terms of the values and behaviors, the way people behave on the day-to-day and the way companies operate day-to-day. It gets like a different road and a more deep road in terms of mapping those specifics. But there is a correlation, not necessarily but they are not the same. That's my comments. Maybe Emma can add on that as well.
Absolutely, Alex. To build on that, it is that deeper road. Your engagement lets you know where people are and what they think. The culture gets to the root of maybe why. Why are these levels of engagement lower or higher than expected? But the culture survey also gives you that future aspect that you don't often get with engagement surveys. It gives you that, where do we go from here? It really is that lead indicator as well as that lag indicator.
Great, thanks, Emma. And real quick, are the results anonymous?
Yes, they are.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. There are a few more questions.
It's an online survey that can be done by any cell phone or internet, and they are anonymous. There is no user ID password, so no way that can be attached to anyone. And when we get the reports from Emma and from the Barrett, we have just the compilation, like the final results of it.
All right, good. We're gonna keep moving here, but I will come back to the Q&A because the questions keep filling up here.
Sure.
So Alex, I'm gonna kind of flip over to you.
Sure.
And obviously you talked about what some of the challenges are, but sometimes when we talk about making an organizational culture change, it just feels like too big, too overwhelming. Like how do we move the needle if maybe we're not able to take an enterprise-wide approach? So what are some things that you would suggest, to all of us, regardless of the size of the organization that we're in, that could help support culture change?
Sure. I think here I'd like to bring some takeaways that the group could benefit from. And I would say that I would have different recommendations for two groups of people. First one, I think many of our audience are HR leaders or HR teams. I say that first of all, start implementing the measurement, because the measurement will bring the data, and it will kind of really prove the concept and prove the thinking of the group. And based on that, you can take a long game approach to cultural change. As I said previously, design a multi-year strategy is really a long journey. It's very tough to embrace and do a full change in a short period of time. We need to realize and understand there are steps that we need to go through it, but you can slice it, you can phase it. And so design a multi-year strategy, prioritizing what's critical for your business and for your group. You definitely need to engage the leaders, especially the top senior leaders of the organization, to be the champion of it. They need to be role models of the culture, and they can be, and the other leaders needs to be the change agents for that. And for me, in HR, we also need to consider that we need to focus in aligning the entire organizational system. What does it mean? It means that we not only need the desired behaviors, but we need to make sure that the organizational processes, policies, and strategies are related to that. For example, the way you hire people, the way you promote people, the way you evaluate people needs to be related to the desired culture. Otherwise, the system will not represent exactly, you're going to be saying something but behaving differently, and at the end the behavior really is more powerful than the words, right? So we need to make sure that the process and the systems are aligned. And on the other side, but this is HR, okay, but when you look to us as leaders, everybody that's a leader in our organization, first of all, take a time for self-reflection. Where am I against the culture? I am a positive example. Am I a toxic example? How I am impacting the organization based on my behaviors? Because anyway, any leader needs to embrace the desired culture. So through self-awareness, maybe he can ask the team, run a 360, get a feedback, somehow understands if they are embracing or not embracing the desired culture on their day-to-day. They need to realize the importance of being a role model, because at the end, the entire team looks to the leader. They expect the leader to set the tone and give the example, put the rhythm. But sometimes teams also have some struggle. They struggle to understand what does it mean, those values in our day-to-day. So the leader needs to look what they do for the organization, what are their tasks or routines and processes and the governance model they have in place. Are those aligned with those values and behaviors? Yes or no? For example, if the organization is fostering agility, simplicity, the way we operate as a team, is it simple? Are we agile enough? Are we bringing innovation in our day-to-days? What way we can introduce innovation, the way we operate? So are we collaborative among each other with other areas? What are our business areas? Look to the interdependency between the areas, how we are operating together as a group. So there are many ways that a leader should and must, I would say must instead of should, must do to really contribute for cultural change.
Yeah, those are great takeaways there, Alex. And Emma, I'm guessing you might want to add something to the list.
Yeah, Alex, that was great, and so many great opportunities there for people. From a broader perspective, what I would just add to this one is sustainable culture change takes time to embed, and we know that. So make sure that along the way, you're really looking for where you can get some of those quick wins that can really keep that energy, sustain that focus that you're going to need to really embed that sustainable change in the organization.
And yeah, go ahead, Alex.
No, I would add, just brought to my mind another good example of things that we can do. Sometimes another thing that organizations always do is having cultural champions, because we know that the leaders have the key role, but if we have people inside all the business areas and teams working as cultural champions, They can be trained. They can be work as like a connection to the leaders and to HR, bringing up feedback and helping sponsor the cultural transformation on the day-to-day inside the entire company. Usually they build these groups based on people that are really motivated to be part of it. They want to really set the tone and contribute to the transformation itself.
Well, and it's a great segue, Alex, because I've got a couple of questions here that I'm going to kind of smush together for, I'm going to start with you, Alex, and then, Emma, obviously feel free to comment. But so, we measure culture, we get all of this data, we get all these insights, and now we want to, in my words, activate the culture. And so there are some questions here around, how to like build that transformation roadmap. What are some of the key considerations and or what are some of the key tools or actions that organizations can leverage to really transform a company's culture?
Okay. Usually what we say when we need to activate, once the desired framework is ready, we sit together when we do some consulting work with the companies, helping them design what we name a cultural transformation roadmap. And this in the roadmap, usually we bring up different dimensions that needs to be addressed. Usually the first of them is communication, because everybody needs to understand the ambition in terms of the evolution of the cultural. What does it mean? What does new values mean for everybody, for each one? So they need to understand. So communication, sensitization is the first and critical step of it. Once it's that, then I think we open for multiple parallel initiatives. First of them, as we said, leaders have a critical role. So we need to develop and contribute to make sure that leaders embrace those desired behaviors on their day-to-day. But we need to help them. I brought to provoke them and to make sure that they have the self-awareness. But to do it on their own day-to-day is difficult and challenging. So usually companies bring up leadership development programs to elevate and speed up the transformation of the desired behaviors. So that's the behavior thing side of it. And then we need to also look to the rituals and symbols of the organization to make sure if the way the company presents themselves to their employees, if they really personalize and they really give the example of the culture. So the way, if sometimes it's the organizational structure, sometimes it's even the office design, sometimes is the business process, the way they communicate, the team staff meetings, the communication meetings. There are many ways in terms of the governance and rituals, I would say, that needs to be looked at it. And there are the process and systems dimension as well, where they need to make sure that it's like a check to make sure that we have those processes aligned, especially the HR processes. HR processes are I would usually suggest they to start with the HR processes and then bring up the business areas to make sure that they also go and review their day-to-day as a business area and say what in our business areas also need to endorse and support the cultural transformation as well. So it's, as we say, you can see it's multiple tasks, initiatives that take place. That's why usually, as Emma said, it's 2 years because it takes time, right? And we need to keep measuring as we evolve during the process. That's why the pulse checks are important. The milestone, the roadmap milestones to be checked as a project. In fact, it's a big project, right? So it needs to be treated like a project. You can add, Emma. Feel free to.
I think, Alex, I think you did a wonderful job there of covering everything.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah, it's really helpful, Alex. Thank you. So we've got a question here. I mean, and I would say it's a pretty common thing that we hear today, which is, we know leaders are stretched. They have a lot on their plates. They've, the role of a leader is very complex these days, right? They have to be able to kind of balance the changes that are happening in the organization, but they also have to, increase their ability to lead and engage and support their teams and people and run the business, right? So given how time stretched they are, how how can we help leaders make this a priority?
Do you know,
You can start Emma, this time.
Go ahead, Emma. We'll throw that one to you.
It's such a tough conversation because you're right, time is precious and people are so stretched in all different things at the moment. But where we come at it from is, it's really about quantifying it and giving them the opportunity to see it in that data manner of this is important and this is why it's important. And so grounding us back in measurement, in data, allows it to come up to those traditional KPI metrics that they're used to focusing on and measuring. So bringing culture into that conversation, it starts to show the importance of it. Where is it in your retention? How is it affecting you financially? Because that's what we know it's doing.
Exactly. I think they need to understand how tangible the topic is and the consequent and direct impact and influence they have on their results. Because sometimes the leaders is so focused on the business results, but the cultural sets the tone, can influence the engagement, as we just said like minutes ago. And if you have a team much more engaged and inspired by the culture, if you have a positive and safe environment internally, you have room for innovation, you have room for ideas, you have room for collaboration, and consequently, you're going to get easier to the results you have and address your business challenges. But what I see HR initiatives that are really contributing is really when each HR has their talent initiatives for each year, and the development initiatives is somehow combine the cultural aspects inside the leadership development initiatives as part of it, like reinforcing, making sure that the leaders have the opportunity and the window to stop and the time to stop, reflect, self-evaluate themselves, and really work on the behavior, on the mindset change, and also on the behaviors development as well, skills development. That's it.
Okay, I just want to thank the audience because we're getting lots of questions here, so keep them coming.
Sure.
And I realize I haven't gotten to all of them, but we'll do our best here. So the next question is that I want to throw out to, maybe I'll start with you, Alex, on this one, and
Okay.
then Emma, if you want to add. The question is, how can we initiate or reapproach change or like cultural transformation if employees are resistant and or hostile towards upper management and HR due to past failed change exercises, right? So an organization has launched things, it didn't go
It
well,
didn't
it
work.
failed, but now, maybe it's a new day, it's a new leadership team or a new business strategy. How do we re-engage people in this?
I think they need to see and realize the real intention, the new real intention, I would say, and the openness of the top senior management of the organization, and how they are, and why this initiative is now positioned again. What's the main goal behind the scenes? So they need to feel that they are being honest with. So usually what we suggest clients is, for example, to the CEO to show up, put their faces and voices, and really talk to the staff. They can be a video, they can be a talk to the staff sessions or whatever, but they need to really show up, I would say, and explain acknowledge the problems from the past, explain the real intentions, really express those, and explain that they really want their honest feedback, and make sure that this time those results will really not stop there. They're going to have an action plan, and they will keep the organization posted in terms of the progress of it. So that's what I would suggest. What about you, Emma?
I would agree the communication is so important, and the honesty, bringing that human aspect into it, in that not everything is a success. Yes, sometimes things fail, and it's what we're learning from. From a technical or practical perspective, this is where different demographics in the report can really help, because your perception is maybe all staff are hostile, and isolating this into different demographics can let you know where maybe some of your biggest challenge groups are.
Yeah.
So how do you build momentum in those that are maybe less hostile, less resistant, to help that move forward?
Yeah, that's an excellent point there, Emma. Thank you. The next question is, how do you encourage leaders? Well, let me say, Alex, I'm going to throw this to you first. How
Okay.
do you encourage leaders who don't see the importance of role modeling behaviors and who see culture change as an HR activity? Right. So this gets to like who owns culture. And, I know we've always said like HR can help support, facilitate, initiate, but ultimately like the business and the leaders, they need to own this. So,
Absolutely.
how would you address that question, Alex?
Yeah. I think, first of all, I think we need to have it's back to communication, I would say, because first of all, everybody needs to understand when we talk about culture, what are we really talking about it and how culture is built up. Because at the end, culture is a reflection of everybody's behaviors, especially leaders, because at the end, it doesn't matter the words in the intranet. What matters are the day-to-day, right? The experience I have working here. And the experience I have working here is with my team, with my leader, with my senior leaders. It's not with HR, right? HR policies helps, enables, foster, but it's not everything, right? So I think that at the end, we need to set the understanding of the accountability, I would say. I think it's an accountability issue, right? So I think that's organizational that probably has as part of the cultural assessment, it will appear some accountability issues here, right? So probably they will need some sort of initiatives in terms of leadership accountability, I would say.
And maybe Emma, before you make that comment, I think there's a question that is related to what Alex was just talking about. And the question is, do you have the ability to capture or a mechanism for capturing the leader's views on the target culture? Right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yes.
Absolutely, that was going to be my build on Alex, is that yes, leadership accountability, and sometimes that starts with building awareness. So separating out the leader's perspective from the rest of the culture to really give them some basic facts on, this is how aligned or misaligned you are. Often that can be a little bit of a wake-up call for them.
Mhm.
Right.
And Emma,
Yep.
I would also add, Christine, if you allow me, the Barrett offers not only cultural values assessment, but they also offer leadership values assessment. It means that you can measure the system, but you can also measure the leaders if you want it. So you can have both, right? So at the end, you're going to have the business area results, but you can also have the individual leader results, so that you can better work or craft the development plan for that.
Excellent. Thank you. Emma, we have a couple of, I'll say, pretty quick questions about the assessment tool. So I'll just gonna run you a couple of them real quick. So the first one is there an optimal company size for this tool? We're a small organization, and I wonder how that impacts results and actions. And they're saying they're like a 25, 30 person staff.
There's not an optimal size. We do companies of that size down to 25, up to, tens of thousands. So there certainly isn't. 20 to 30 is fine. We usually say our minimum is 10, just so you've got enough level of agreement.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, Kristen, to add to that, they don't need to be worried in terms of the cost of it, because Barrett offers different ranges in terms of the size of organization. So if it's a small group, it's of course very lower price than different of a 5,000 size of organization.
Great. Thanks, Alex.
So it's affordable, I would say.
Okay. The next question for you, Emma, about the assessment is, I just lost it on my screen. Where'd it go? It's around industries. Sorry, I have more coming through, so it bounces on me. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I just have to scroll again. So I guess maybe just speak to, do you focus on any particular industries? I think this question was around someone who works in an organization in the financial services industry.
We've done a broad wealth of industries, from financial services through to mining to nonprofits. So we've certainly covered in our over 25 years the broad spectrum of them. I will say financial services, banking, that sort of industry, insurance, etc., are particularly common. But I think that's probably because they're particularly common in the world.
Yeah, and also interesting to highlight here, Christian, that because we apply for such different types of organizations, Barrett also offers, when we have the final grade of your culture, they have benchmarks for industry sectors as well. So you can say, for example, what's my grade, but I can compare to the industry segment average grade as well. So am
Yeah.
I doing well? Am I below, above? So that's very interesting data that also gets from the process.
Okay, great. Emma, two more quick questions about how long does it take for someone to complete? Like if I receive this link and I need to give my feedback, how much time does it take?
You're looking at around 5 to 7 minutes, potentially less if you read quickly, but we see on average 5 to 7.
Okay, great. And then the next one's are rapid fire at you here. This organization is a global company. So is this a tool that's available in multiple countries?
And
Absolutely.
language.
Yeah, we've done over 95 countries. Most of our assessments available in around 50 languages. We try to cover that as best as we can. And we certainly make it customizable to meet those needs.
Okay. Well, we are approaching the top of the hour here. It's been a great discussion. I just want to thank the audience for, all the awesome questions that are coming through. And I apologize to any of you that I wasn't able to get to your question, but we'll go through and take a look at those. And I know there was a question about the transcript, so there definitely will be some follow-up items that we'll be sending out to all of you who have participated. But first, I really wanted to thank Emma and Alex for joining us today. And sharing your wisdom, your expertise, your insights with all of us. I think for me, certainly in the work that we do at LHH, one of the things that we know that really matters is to be able to leverage data, right? And so Emma, you and your team bring us the data, and then we're able to wrap our support around helping to really activate that culture change. And then I think Alex, you talked about this insight about like how do you get started, right? And so there are ways to get started in small ways, even if you're not able to engage in an enterprise-wide, culture initiative. And I think the thing that always resonates with me is, all of us are showing up and working inside of our organizations today, and we all have a responsibility to show up and really bring a positive perspective, create healthy environments that really allow our people and our teams to really thrive and grow. So it's been a great conversation today. And then in terms of next steps, so I mentioned at the beginning, today was the second session in a 3-part series. So we have our 3rd part coming up in June. So look for the invite on that. And the next conversation will be to some of the questions that were really around how to create that transformation roadmap. This is really going to be all around activating culture change, driving culture change. And we'll be including a client or two who will be joining us to share their particular experience and story around this. So look for the invite, and we encourage you to join us. And with that, I just want to say thank you again to Alex and Emma, and to Kate and Jackie behind the scenes for helping us bring this conversation to all of you today. So I wish everyone a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you in June. Thanks all. Take care.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.